Hey, hello everybody. This is TJ with ShopBot Tools, and today we're going to look at tips and tricks for CNC and ShopBotting. And these are, I went around and asked different staff members who spend a lot of time on the machine, what's a favorite thing you like to do? Something simple. I also pulled it with our customers and got some feedback, so we'll show you guys some different tips in the drawing software, and the control software, and out on the machine itself. So let's go ahead and get started with today's training. All right, so for this first one, let's look at using the diagonal and the keypad. So in the ShopBot 3 software, if you bring up the keypad and you hover in between the arrow keys, you'll see that it says move diagonally in the positive X and the positive Y. So it does say that in that area, but also so you know, all four uh, corners will allow you. Down is the negative X and Y, and then again, they may not have the message that comes up, but all four of them do work for plus and minus your different quadrants. So holding up there allows your both X and Y axes to move out of the way. Just a convenient little tip and trick. Allows you to move it positive X and Y axes at the same time. And also, like we saw it here on the keypad, if we move our arrow down to the negative portion of it, it'll do the same thing that we were doing in positive and move back down to the negative. So you can do negative X and Y axes here. So there would be in between your keys on the keypad for moving your X and Y axes in a diagonal. The next one we're going to look at is naming toolpaths. This is something that will really help you when you're out at your machine trying to load files. It helps with organization. So when you get your project ready, this is an inlay sign that we did in a previous training. Really, this just comes down to you coming up with a method that works for you. However it is that you want to label it, so it makes it easier for you to locate, find, and load the correct files. So just a personal preference on this one, and then I'll also show you a couple here that Buddy recommended, because this was his tip of the day. And what you have here is you have 5 different toolpaths. They're ordered number 1 through 5. They have the name of the project, welcome sign, in the toolpath name. They also have abbreviated or spelled out, depending on what they are. PKT for pocket. You have texture, inlay, cutout for your through cut. Really get into whatever it is that you want to write in there. It's up to you. Things that I do want to point out here is we do use an underscore or a period, and you don't see any other special characters or anything in there. And what's nice about this is when you go click to here save, whatever you have typed in here is what's going to show up in your file as the .sbp file. And again, that's another tip in the software with naming files, is you want to stay away from special characters, because those in Windows can butt heads sometimes when you're saving a file with a special character in it. So with this one here, it's labeled in the order of the cut, the name of the file that we're working on, so we know the project, what the file is, and then even the type of bit, 0.25 depth, and then it's a 0.5 EM for end mill. Some people might even add on their extra, like a U or a D, U for an up spiral or D for a down spiral, S for a straight. But just this is a good tip that Buddy had pointed out, was really taking a good time to name your toolpaths. And I say this as 2 different formats because there's a lot of ShopBotters from over the years that have used to different types of saving. Currently, your ShopBots all come with a post processor that's a TC inch, and TC stands for tool change, allowing you to do a save here of all 5 toolpaths, where we have a 1/2 inch straight, a 1/4 inch ball nose, and then a 1/4 inch upcut. And when you're running this file mid-cut, it will get done. The ShopBot will finish with a 1/2 inch straight, ask you for the 1/4 inch, and then ask you for the 1/4 inch. It goes through. At one time where there was no TC inch and your post processor was just ShopBot inch or ShopBot millimeter or whatever it may have been, each toolpath was saved individually. And there's still a lot of people that prefer that method, where they like to run one toolpath at a time. So if this welcome sign was something I was ready to go cut right now, there's 2 ways I would go about doing this. One is I have everything highlighted and I hit Save Toolpaths to File. I save that as one bulk file. Or what I would do is I would click at these one at a time. And that's why we have the number in there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember, it's the click. It's not what's highlighted here. It's what actually is checked. And that checked one, every time you click that one and you save it, that checked one shows up there. And also a tip for you guys that are at home and you have all 5 of these clicked and you go, how come it's only showing one of them up here? It's because you don't have this output all visible toolpaths to one file. If that's not checked, it's whichever one is highlighted here in your text. So this is usually a tool, this is a screen that usually gets looked over because we use it our one way that we've only known how to use it. But knowing that if you have this checked, you're able to have multiple tool paths, which are all 5 with 3 different bits. So you have, again, we'll go back to this one tip here with 2 different options. I can save all 5 as one file, or I can save them one at a time. And just to show you what that looks like here, if I save the welcome sign.tc for tool change, when I go into this file, you will see that it has in here where it has tool number 4, which was my 1/2 inch straight, and then it goes down through the lines of code. And if I was to scroll through all of these, it's going to go through, it's going to find my different tools that I have for my different cuts, and it's going to actually have me pause mid-cut. New path, 1/4 inch ball nose, tool number 12, and the screen will prompt you to do a tool change. So that is a feature that's nice that has that in there. If you have an automatic tool changer machine, it's going to automatically change the bit for you. But for even us that have a manual 1 spindle, 1 collet ShopBot, we're able to just have one file going. Some people prefer not to do this because there could be an issue with re-zeroing. Maybe you forgot to put the clip on, or you didn't, you weren't ready with the right bit, and then here you are now mid-file with a little bit of a hiccup in your process. So what some people do with that instead is underneath my Toolpaths folder here, you can see I named all 5 of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's your 1 welcome sign. It's a pocket, 0.25, 0.5 end mill. So there's a really good description in the tool name. So use some abbreviations. If it was a V bit for a V carving, I might go V90 because it's a 90 degree, or V60 depending on what it be. You might also add a U or a D for an up spiral or down spiral. But really, it's just, this one's tip is just naming your tool paths or naming your files in general. That makes it more convenient for you. Well, this next one was asked by Brian King, and it was a spoilboard grid. And this one's really nice for laying a grid out on your ShopBot's desktop for layout purposes, for making temporary zeros. So all I've done on here is, you see on this is a 96 by 48 table, and I've just made grid that's every 12 inches, 12, 24, 36, 48, all the way up to 96 in the X, and then 48 in the Y. Took my text thing, made my 00, even put on here just a couple reference points. I know a few ShopBotters that have done this over the years, and it's really just a nice way to lay out a grid on your machine. So if you are out in your shop and you're actually going to be using, say, a different spot where you're working out back out here, and you're going to actually put your board down here, you can use your grid that you put in there. And instead of carving down into your spoil board, what you would actually use for this is something that WidgetWorks makes, and it's called the, this one here is called the plotter pen. It's different color Sharpies, and it goes in this little, it's kind of not really spring loaded, but it does have some give on this. And what's nice about all these little WidgetWorks accessories is they do come with a nice set of instructions on how to set them up in your tool database with feeds and speeds, but it uses a Sharpie marker instead of a bit, so you're not actually cutting. And then with this one here, again, you just toolpath this one being a profile toolpath. Want to select everything, and then, again, I'm using the instructions that come with this WidgetWorks thick line plotter pen. It says to have a pass depth 0.05. There's my 0.05 cut depth. It's just a profile toolpath on the line, and I hit calculate. And you could go through and set this up to be more efficient as far as your toolpath cut. But what this would do is lay a grid on your spoil board, and then you have something for referencing, for doing different areas for temporary zeros and holding your part down in different spots. So the only thing I would recommend before you do lay a grid on there is to surface your table so it's nice and flat, and it also gets rid of any divots or whatnot in there from the previous cut. So nice flat table, and then this one is called a spoil board grid, and you could set this up to whatever increment size that you want. Some people have even V-carved down into their table these lines instead of drawing them with the WidgetWorks plotter. So spoil board grid. Okay, we had another one from Brian, and that one is safe axis pull-up for your Z-axis. And he had brought up a great point is, hey, I just get done changing my bit, or I put a bit in for the day, I zero my Z-axis, and it only lifts up a half of an inch, which then you have to go and get your keypad and move that up so you can get your dust foot back on. So to change that safe Z, we'll show you how to do that. The only thing I want to point out to you guys with smaller machines that don't have as much Z clearance, or you're using a longer bit, if you put too much of a safe Z pull-up, you could go lift up your axis too high, and that could bottom out and lose position, or top out, I should say, in that sense. But one right here, we are going to go and look at V for values, and then C for cutter values. VC is our quick command. VC right here, and then right here is we have a safe Z pull-up. So for default here, it's a half of an inch. And if we wanted to say change that to, again, you want to make sure that you're not lifting it up too high where you're going to be topping it out and losing position. So if I lifted it up to, say, a safe Z pull-up of 2 inches, I know after I get done doing my Z0 routine and I hit change bit, okay, are you ready? Yes, and it will lift up 2 inches above, and then I can put my dust foot back underneath. So then I'll change that right there, and then when I run this routine of safe Z, or whenever it wants to lift up to a safe Z height to move around, this Z here is going to lift up to 2 inches. So that's where we have our, that's where we would change that underneath values, cutter values. This is one that Richard thought would be great for us to share, and this one's using the remote pendant again in the keypad. So we first bring up our keypad, and what this allows you to do with a remote pendant is use a wireless mouse over at your machine. So we click on remote, and you use a shop mouse or ShopBot remote pendant. This is something we sell as well. You can look at that on our website. And we click on that, and we'll look out here on our machine. And for this one here, I'm just going to use the wireless mouse on the computer. Being that your left and right mouse keys will allow you to move back and forth, and then to change the axes that you want, that's where that center scroll wheel, you just push that down. So I just switched to the Y axis, and now there's your positive and your negative direction. And then again, I can hit the center scroll wheel again down one, and it changes to the Z axis. Same thing, back and forth. And then again, if you wanted to go back to your X, you would just click on that center scroll wheel again. So there you go, there's remote pendant. Well, this next one we're going to look at is staying with keypad, and this one was by Matt, and this is keypad speeds. So there's different speeds you can move around while you're in your keypad. This is really helpful on your longer 8-foot and above tables. So here's your regular keypad, and you use your arrow keys for moving it, which is just your move speed. But when you hold the control key down and move it, it's now going to be going at a jog speed. So we'll look at those two, and then we'll also look at switching into fixed mode for moving your machine, which is when you click on fixed, you're able to go in here and put whatever setting it is that you want to move your axes by. So it'll move in those exact increments as you're touching it off. So move speed, jog speed, and fixed mode are 3 different ways of moving around while using the keypad. So there's move speed. You can see I'll stop, hold the control key down, there's jog speed, and now when I get it close, I'll slow back down to move speed, get it very close to the X, so you can see back and forth. Now it's been put into fixed mode, where I set the increment and then go in there nice and easy. So it makes it really nice for when you're aligning different positions, temporary zeros, and that would be moving in with the keypad in the fixed mode, and control key is what you hold down to move faster down your axis. These next few tips are all in the ShopBot control software. These are by Frank, who spent many years with the tech support, so he's seen it all in the software. And one is just going between full mode and easy mode. So some people at home that go, hey, where's this big screen coming from with the command console? You may be in something called easy mode, which I just clicked on there. And that's easy mode doesn't allow operators to go in and change those settings. So it's really nice in a school where you don't want any variables or feeds or speeds being set in that area. So how to get out of easy mode and back to full is the next question, which is where you click on the question mark and then switch back to full mode here. And okay, yes, I can always click on easy to get back to easy mode, and here I am back at full. So the first one is looking at changing speeds on the fly, and that one would be just going up here to help menu and printing out this and keeping this next to your ShopBot is the keyboard shortcuts. And I'll bring that up, and I got to zoom in here a little bit. Apologize for my Acrobat reader is a little bit large. And what we have here are some different commands that you can go through, and you print this out and have it next to your machine. It'll be real helpful for opening, keypad shortcut keys when running a file, how to increase or decrease move speed, how to move things diagonally. This would help you a little bit with some of the earlier commands that we just talked about. It gives you some of those right here in a printed format. So that would be something to recommend to do. And then we'll go into a couple of these other ones that he recommended, and that would be underneath utilities. Once you have your ShopBot up and running and everything's running really well for you and you've been going for a while, it is really recommended to go in here and go utilities and save your current settings. So save current settings to a custom settings file. And what I'm doing is I'm saving my file, and I would just call this, this is being, March 2018, so I would have this version of all of my settings that I put in here in case I ever lost this computer or had to reset. I could always go back to utilities and load a version of it where I could reset it to an earlier version if I didn't want to go straight back to default. So those are a couple there from Frank about help. Shortcut keys, something to print out so you can change speeds and cutting on the fly. That'd be a good training all in itself to go into that one more in depth. And then in utilities there to also save your save your current settings. So if you ever had to go back to all these different parameters and things that you've switched, you could go back to having them already set for you instead of having to go and do them all one by one. This next one was sent in from a customer, and this one is our file progress. And this one's really a neat feature. So when you're running your machine out on the ShopBot, obviously you can see what's been cut by looking at the board on the material that's on the ShopBot. But underneath values, and then you could go down here to display values, is this feature here called Show File Progress. And if you turn that on, what's nice about this is right here is your file progress indicator. And since I'm not running a file, I'll just bring up my keypad and you can see this. If you were running a file, whatever the machine is running, and as you see my little blue line here, you'll see where it would be making the cut. So you would see the shape that your ShopBot is cutting out. And as you're lifting up and down in the Z, you'll see this change here as far as where the Z is. But you'll see the shape of it. So it's what is really nice is, you can't always see underneath your dust foot what little shape that it's cutting out, or the progress by looking at the board. You can stare right here at the computer screen and see how far along in the file you are. So again, this is called your file progress indicator, and that was underneath values, display values, and that was just right down here, show file progress. Just another tip that was recommended by a customer. Alright, this next one has a lot of impact for just changing one setting, and it's a pretty neat feature. So what I'm looking to show you on this one is underneath values, limits for table. So if you're somebody that uses your proc switches a lot and your default 00, VL is a good one to go here and turn on file limit checking. So watch what happens when I turn on. So I turn on, I hit OK, nothing changes so much. But what's nice about having file file checking on is when you're going to go and run a simple file, like right here, this one here that says far, far away, and I want to V-carve this out, and I go down here to click my cut part, and I go and I load my far, far away, and I hit open, and I go to hit start. It does bring up a message now saying, whoa, hey, the x-axis is going to go beyond the software limits. And what that means is my software right now, this is set up for a ShopBot desktop, is what this computer's hooked up to do, and it's going to go past that X limit, or Y, whatever it is that you're going to go past. It would say that on your screen. Okay, if you want to temporarily disable that, which means, okay, the file's going to move forward and start cutting. So are you okay with that? You better check what's going on. Or for me, yikes, that's not right. I'm going to hit cancel out of this. So people that use a lot of temporary zeros and offsets, they may not be someone that turns this on, and that's why it's not default turned on when you purchase your ShopBot, but it's really a nice feature to leave on. So right now it is saying, hey, you're going to go past your X, so let's hit cancel. And let's go back to our software and go, well, what's going on here? If I would have spent the time doing my 3D preview and checking things out, still everything looks pretty darn good. I'm not seeing anything, but a couple little hints where you should be looking when this is turned on. Look at that red line. It's going out past. There's one indication something's not right. In 2D view here, if I scroll out or I hit F for full screen, whoa, I see that there was some extra text that was way over here that accidentally got highlighted. So what happened was when the V-carve was being set up, this was just maybe some earlier fonts that were being tested or earlier parts of a project that were left out there in no man's land that accidentally got selected. Very easy to overlook. So that's why that limits is really nice to turn on. So in this case, I would just deselect that and recalculate this. So that one is, again, a very simple going values, limits, turning it on or off, but look at what it can do for you. All right, another one that was brought up by our staff, by Sturmer here, was when you're doing V-carving, especially with uneven material, to add a start depth down into your cut. It's real handy with uneven material, and you can see here this is a sign that I made out of old flooring from another building, and being old beat up material that's been around for 100 years, just to be safe, so I got down inside of it all. I actually gave it a start depth that was a little bit deeper than what I might have had the V-carving in the software set up for. So let's just look at exactly what it is I'm trying to say here. So, there's just your file, and inside of the V-carve toolpath here, you actually give this a start depth of, 20, 30 thousandths, and that will actually take the cutter and go down in a little bit deeper. So you start a few thousandths down into the material with the cut, and it helps out with uneven material. So if you're messing around with different signs, it's a nice tip for sign makers to get around uneven material. And you can always sand and whatnot to the different spots, but some people are going to say, well, hey, it's cutting too deep or not enough. Uneven material is going to be one way or the other. That's just how it is. So I'd rather go a little bit deeper than not being able to cut deep enough and not seeing the sign. So this one is an example where we would give it a start depth for uneven material. One that our customers asked us to talk about is gadgets. What are gadgets? Gadgets are something that are built into the Vectric software. There may not be a key player yet where they're built into the regular icons, but if you go up here, you'll see that you do have some icons, some gadgets that do come with the software. And if you go to About, what these are just they're the things that may be incorporated into the software at one time or another. They may just be left as a gadget, but they're useful little pieces of software that can be added in free of charge. It's just a matter of downloading them. And you can go to this website and read all about these more in depth, but things that I've personally enjoy using are the Gear Maker, the regular grid importer for Aspire, and the dovetail one is always a fun one to do. Dado toolpath creator, chamfers around edges, The auto dog bone is one that people like to use. So these are just parts of software that can be clicked on. Go in there, it explains how to use them, shows you how to download them, has some instructions. And what this would do here, example for the dog bone gadget, is it would go and add dog bones all the way around to any vector that needs a dog bone in the software versus you clicking on them all. So that is Gadget, something to look into there. This one here is one of my favorites, is how to use drywall screws out in the field, meaning out in the middle of your board. How do you put them in with the whole nesting? So on a part like this where it's filled in pretty good, we'll look at the project here so you can see what it is. It's a combination lock, one you can download from our website. And I would never be able to efficiently put these screws out in here, run with my screwdriver, and I need them out in the middle because there's a lot of little parts that are in this small board. So I use the Vectric software to actually lay out where my drywall screws are going to go, because that's the hold down method I've chosen to use in this cut. So now when I start my cutting, whether it's around my profile or my V carving, I'm never going to hit a screw head with my cutter because I use the software to put the screws in the location where they would be safe. They're close, but they're not going to hit because I use the Vectric software. So what happens for this, and the way I do this one, is I draw my parts, I lay them out, I put them in there, I go as far as toolpathing them all so I know where everything's going to be. And then from this here, I go up to where it says turn on the wireframe to solid, and I turn those to a to the purple solid. And at that point, that's where I'll come over here, grab my draw circle command, which is, around a 1/4 inch or so, is usually around the drywall screw's head. And then I will come in here and I will place these screws, or circles in this case is all they are, in locations that I know if they're not touching that purple distance, they're not going to get hit by my router bit. So you can see where I've carefully put all of these different screw heads around where they're not going to hit. They may be close in some areas, but they're not going to hit. And now what I will do when I go to save this toolpath, I will uncheck everything and just save the hold down method first. So I will just save this as the padlock, combination lock, hold down. And I may put some clamps on the 4 corners, or sometimes if it's a full-size sheet, a 3/4 inch, it has enough weight because of the mass of the material size. And all you're doing for this hold-down toolpath, it's just nothing more than a drilling toolpath, and it's going down with my first bit, which is just my 1/4 inch bit, and it's just making a dimple in the material, 0.03. So it's just dimpling the material and moving out of the way. Then I take my keypad in my ShopBot software, I move the gantry out of the way, and I run a drywall screw in each one of those dimples. Then I'll come back here and I'll run the rest of my toolpaths minus the hold down, and now it'll go ahead and cut. And that goes right back to where our picture was from before, where now we can see the screws are fine. And when we start making our cuts around here, since we laid it out in the Vectric software, it's in a safe location that we don't have to worry about our little end mill running into one of those drywall screws. Well, we went through 12 wonderful tips today. There's hundreds more out there. We could keep going and going, but to keep the training short and moving on, we'll do this one again in a few months so you can see a whole nother set of trips. Thank you for everybody that sent them in. If you're looking for more tips and tricks, you could always get on a ShopBot forum, see what other types of people are doing. There's really no trick to it. It's just people that are getting out there and trying things that work for them and sharing it with others. So if you have a neat one that you like, post it up there. Everyone likes to see that stuff, or send it on to me and we'll feature it in the next one. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.